The book that is enraging the smelly soy-based cannibals of Twitter. It dabs on the SJWs. It T-poses on the comic book industry. Cower in fear. Cyberfrog is here. Hello and welcome back to the #1 Lunar Stan channel. I am OzChris and I'm here with a review of Cyberfrog Bloodhoney, written and drawn by Ethan Van Sciver, the coloring by Kyle Ritter, and the lettering by Somni. Finally, almost a year late, we finally got Cyberfrog Bloodhoney. Ethan finally delivered on his book. Can't say the same for Richard Pace and Beat Claymore for their books, but at least Ethan actually delivered on what he promised. Not on time, but at least it actually came out. So, Cyberfrog Bloodhoney is split into 3 parts. And I'm going to apologize in advance, Ethan. I'm probably going to butcher a lot of these names. Why don't you just use normal names, please, so I don't butcher them? You know, stop making up your own goddamn language, people. Everyone in comics, stop it. It hurts, and it makes me look like an idiot when I cannot pronounce them properly. So, we are introduced to Kjell Sin, who arrives on Earth to prepare for an invasion by these bee wasp species called the Vizpiz. So, Kjell Sin creates 2 defenders. The first of which is Trickran, aka Cyberfrog, who will be the main kind of ambassador of their planet and the main defender of Earth. And the second one Kjell creates is a brother to him called Darduran Ran, aka Salamandroid. His job is to help and protect Cyberfrog at all costs in their mission. But as Cyberfrog experiences Earth and its people, it starts to change him until he meets a woman by the name of Heather Swain, who he rescues. The 2 become very close friends, and so does Salamandroid when he makes his appearance as well. And that is entirely what part 1 is, the introduction to these main 3 protagonists. We go into part 2 where Kjell Sin gets warnings that the Vizpiz invasion has finally come. They're finally here to invade. As Cyberfrog and Salamandroid, they go off to fight off this group called Pollinate, led by Rumblebee. There's these group of also bee wasp looking creatures, but don't be confused, they have nothing to do with the Vizpiz, despite the fact they're both thematically like the same kind of species, same kind of animal. So those 2 go to deal with them, and just as all of this happened, the Vizpiz have arrived. They've started attacking humans, consuming them, using their blood to become nectar for their young. Hence the term Bloodhoney, Cyberfrog Bloodhoney. That's what they're mainly here for, to use humans as nectars for their young, and probably for themselves as well. So the invasion has fully started. Before they can deal with Pollinate and Rumblebee, the invasion has fully arrived. The Vizpiz attack, and this leads to a cliffhanger, which leads to part 3, which is kind of the aftermath of Cyberfrog waking up, finding that almost the entirety of the planet has been overrun by the Vizpiz. So, I'm going to leave to my thoughts on the story last. So we're going to talk about the art and the coloring. The art and the coloring for Cyberfrog Bloodhoney, I'm going to give a 5 out of 5. Ethan is a great artist. He definitely is. For people who know, I've talked about this before, Ethan is one of my favorite artists, and he's half of the reason I got into comic books. And every time that he draws, he does not fail to impress me. He always succeeds when it comes to his art. The art in Cyberfrog is phenomenal. You are definitely at least going to get at least half of your money's worth with the art and the coloring here. The art and the coloring is absolutely amazing. Every piece of it, like no part of this book, the art is downgraded because it's not it's not an action scene. It's not a scene that's important. So you're not going to want to put all your time and effort into this one scene. No, all of the art, all of the coloring here is amazing. Ethan's art is absolutely just floored me with how just great this looked. And Kyle Ritter's coloring works so well with Ethan's artwork. The two really are a dynamic duo. They work so well hand in hand together. They are a great artistic team together. The cover, this one, I'm going to give a 5 out of 5 as well. It's done by Ethan and Kyle as well. So the art you're going to get on the cover is definitely what you're going to get within the interior of the book. So definitely a 5 out of 5 for the cover. I really do like the action pose of Cyberfrog leaping out from the white light. And I do think that the having the chromium cover actually helps bolster and improve upon this kind of action pose. It really does make Cyberfrog himself stand out from the rest of the background. So definitely a great and amazing looking cover. But onto the story. The story, I'm going to give the story a 3 out of 5. This was average. It was just exposition, and just as it gets to this actual plot, when everything, the invasion begins, and it feels like, okay, we're finally getting into the story of Cyberfrog Bloodhoney. Just when it gets there, it ends on a cliffhanger to come back and then end that on a cliffhanger again. It is very disappointing that it's just nothing but lead up, and just as when it gets to the plot, it cuts away and just ends there. It is very disappointing. $25 for this book, and it's just nothing but exposition. I would have preferred much more. In comparison, another Indiegogo comic that also ended on a cliffhanger was Maylin's Graveyard Shift. It led up to this supposed huge climactic battle, and then it did a Godzilla where it just tells you what happened, and then it ended on a sequel baiting cliffhanger. But the thing is, I believe with Graveyard Shift, it's still provided enough within the story before it reached the ending to satisfy me and any of the readers. With this, it's just exposition. That's all I can really say. It's just exposition. That here's Kajel Sin, here's the birth of Cyberfrog and Salamandroid, here's them meeting Heather, all of that. I actually really did. I went in here with some expectations, but I tried to go in with like a clear mind, not trying to be biased. Like I said, Ethan's one of my favorite artists, so I tried to go in, professionally, no bias at all, clean slate. Let's see what the story is and all of that. And I just left really disappointed with what I got. Story wise, it's not good. This is definitely going to be something I would not recommend by itself. Cyberfrog, I think this is going to be a comic where it's much better to buy it as a complete collection, because I do know there is more to Cyberfrog that's coming out. The next one is Wrecked Planet, I believe it's called. I've heard it's going to be a 3-part story, a 4-part story, all of that. But to the start of this overall story, it wasn't a particularly good start. It was very disappointing. It was quite an average story for Bloodhoney, which is a bit of a shame given the hype that surrounded this comic. No, this is the comic that will change everything. This will own the SJWs. This will bring forth a new golden age to the comic book industry. Crowdfunding, Indiegogo, it is going to be the way of the future. And if this is what we're getting, I do not think that this new comic book industry will survive. Art-wise, it will. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, the art side to this, phenomenal. It is. The art and the coloring in this is definitely the highlight of the book and the best part of Cyberfrog Bloodhoney. But the story, there could have been a lot of improvements to it, and there are just some parts that didn't need to be there. Like before Cyberfrog and Salamandroid go off to head to fight Rumblebee and the Poland 8, Heather is watching Bill Clinton talk about the Monica Lewinsky scandal, admitting what he did, and I just felt like, why is this here, and why do we need to read it? It adds nothing to the story, adds nothing at all. This doesn't need to be here. Something I came up with is you could have just had this in the background. Heather's still watching it, but we don't need the dialogue boxes of Bill Clinton talking, admitting what he did was wrong, all of that. It serves nothing to the entirety of Bloodhoney, except for maybe only one scene where it cuts away from the end of that interview and, well, at the end of that announcement, and Bill Clinton is being escorted away by the Secret Service's guards because there's an alien invasion occurring. Really, I think that's the only reason why it's there, just to serve that one scene. To be fair, you could still keep that scene in question, and just not have any of the dialogue in the scene where Heather is watching it, and it really wouldn't change anything. Also, a lot of the dialogue was a bit stale. Particularly one part that I found stale was the Cyberfrog and Salamandroid's fight against Rumblebee and Poland 8. So when Salamandroid gets angry, he kills each member of the Poland 8, but then reduces the numbers. So he's like, Poland 8, now you're Poland 7, you B-boys aren't even real, just robots. Maybe that's why you don't care about playing with bombs. You don't have feelings. Now you're Poland 6. You're trying to hurt my brother, Poland 5. You deserve to die. You can't hurt anyone anymore, Poland 4, Poland 3. It really just does come off as you are bad. I do not like bad. Me not bad, but you are, and you commit bad. So I stop you because bad. Now there are less of you because you have a number in your name to signify how many there are in your group. Ha 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 ha. Like it really did come off as a bit stale. I don't know if it was supposed to be comedic. It did kind of feel like that, but it wasn't particularly good in my opinion. I think everything else was alright. It was just the fact that it was all exposition was really disappointing. So on to like one last thing I'm going to talk about. Actually, no. I just remembered something, had something to do with one scene. So before I get into the last thing, I'm going to mention something. So, despite the fact I said the art and the coloring and everything, 5 out of 5, phenomenal, amazing, definitely getting you at least half your money's worth with it. There is one scene when we're introduced to Heather. So Heather, she's wearing this purple jacket. She has this creep Ben trying to, have his way with her, and she fights back, and then she's saved by saved by Cyberfrog, sorry. She's saved by him, but the paneling goes like this. So you have Heather, then you have Heather calling him a creep, she knees him, and then the next part is Cyberfrog saving her. I don't know if you can notice, I'll probably put in a much closer screenshot or video of it, but Heather is wearing a purple jacket in 3 of those panels. When she is saved by Cyberfrog, it's mysteriously missing. I don't know if there was a panel missing or that was just a mistake, but it was something that I noticed, that she's evidently wearing something that suddenly just disappears. Something that not really stands out, but it is something that is not like a particularly darkish attire, whatever. I mean, it is a dark purple, but it was at least noticeable when it just suddenly disappears, because now you can probably see the rest of her shoulders, arms, and all of that, but you really couldn't before because she was wearing the jacket. So that was something I wanted to make note of. I don't know if it was a mistake or whatever, but it was something that was at least noticeable. So another thing, the last thing I wanted to mention was postage. So I'm mixed when it came. I have a mixed opinion about Cyberfrog Bloodhoney's postage. On one hand, I'm happy that it arrived nice, safely, not damaged at all, thank God. Which everyone wants. No one wants any of their products to be damaged via postage. But on the other hand, having just it bagged and boarded and then have a single thick piece of cardboard as its kind of support is a particularly weak way to post it. Out of all these Indiegogo comics that I've got physical copies of, John Malin has been the smartest. He used a Gemini mailer for Graveyard Shift, and I think really that if you're going to print like physical copies, you're going to crowdfund through Indiegogo, you're going to post whatever, I think Geminis are definitely the way you got to go. None of these I've got, the Indiegogo comics physical copies, have been damaged, but you do have to put in a lot of care into it, and just kind of simply bagging and boarding it and then just putting a thick piece of cardboard as support is a bit weak, considering like all this time and all this hype and how like this has to be perfect. Everything about Cyberfrog Bloodhoney has to be perfect, and for postage, not particularly. It did arrive safely, but I would have expected much more from given the hype and the talk from Ethan himself about the process of making this comic. So to summarize, Cyberfrog Bloodhoney is a very, very phenomenal looking art book that just happens to have words. The art and the coloring by Ethan Van Sciver and Carl Ritter, phenomenal, amazing. You are definitely, like I said numerous times, you are definitely going to get at least half your money's worth with the art and the coloring and the cover itself. Story, you're not. The story is weak. It is nothing but exposition, and it's very average. Given the hype, I was kind of expecting much, much more, and it falls flat on that hype. So, yeah. Oh, and also, one more thing. I keep forgetting. I know I have stuff I need to talk about, but I keep forgetting him. One thing, for most people that, I think for everyone that got Cyberfrog Bloodhoney, it came with the extras, bookmarks, all that. Ethan, word of advice, you don't need a separate bag and board for the extra goodies unless it's something that's too big that will affect bagging and boarding the comic itself. It's a minor nitpick, but you really didn't need to put the little extra small effort into putting these goodies into an extra bag and board. You could have just put it in the first one with the comic. So, like, for example, Battle Maiden Knuckle Bomb. This apart from the postage, this is how it came in. Bag and board, comic at the front, the rest of the extra stuff in the back, and it doesn't affect or damage either of the products. Plain and simple, you only needed one bag and board. So that was a very, very, very minor nitpick there. And that is my review of Cyberfrog Bloodhoney. Thank you all for watching. Leave in the comments if you agreed with my assessment of this book. Do you disagree? Did it achieve the job of owning the SJWs? All of that. If you liked it, leave a like. If you haven't already, or you're new to the channel, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you want to follow me on social media, my Twitter and Instagram, my names for those are in the outro. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye.